Hi, welcome back to the LaunchPoint Leader Podcast. My name's Lori.
And this is Beau.
And we're so happy to be back for another week to read a story that a listener has written in and just give some input and take on their journey. And if anyone else has anything they would like to share that is similar to situation or something completely different, we would love to hear. And you can always write us in at advice@launchpointleader.com. So our letter today says, "Good morning. I'm writing to you guys today feeling like I'm reaching the end of my rope. I'm not a business owner, but a higher level manager at a mid-sized company. I lead a team of 60 people, and while I've had smaller teams in the past, I'm facing a problem I've never had before with my other teams. I've been in my job for about 9 months, and every time I try to introduce new ideas or streamline current processes, it is met with extreme pushback. It's to the extent that my department looks almost exactly the same, if not worse, than when I took over. I have made a point to meet both as a group and individually with the entire team, but there is still such a strong resistance to changes, even when I explain how it will make their jobs easier in most circumstances. Most of them have been with our company for many years, and my predecessor was in the role for 5 years before I took over. At first, I chalked this up to being new in the role and having to earn their trust. Now, I have put in the effort and heard them out, but I'm still treated with hesitancy and mistrust. How do I get out of that state with them and prove that they can trust me? Beyond that, how do I push through the negative feedback and make the changes I know are necessary? Thanks for your guidance. I really enjoy my job and don't want this to hold me back from succeeding in a role I know I can do well. Sincerely, Craving Changes."
When I took over my first restaurant, the first thing I did is went in and reorganized the kitchen and the dry storage area. And I was moving peanut oil. And Mike, who had been there for years, rolled up around the corner and told me that that was the dumbest decision he had ever seen. Peanut oil there would never work.
Impossible. Can't.
It was a terrible idea, and that I'd be changing it back tomorrow once I realized what everybody else already did. And I just sat the peanut oil down. I looked at him. I said, "Thank you so much for your feedback. I'll take it into consideration." I turned around and looked at the peanut oil and looked back at him. I said, "It's been considered, and I'm going to continue on as I'm doing right now. Thank you for adapting to change. And if this doesn't work, I'll be the first one to make the adjustment." So, God, I hadn't thought about that story. I hadn't thought about Mike in a long time.
Oh, that took you back.
I think Mike's listening to this.
Okay. Probably not.
But he might be. Mike, if you are, give us a shout and tell us your version of that story. No, I think so. What I love about this, so you said a couple of things first. This leader says they've connected individually, and they've covered some things as a group about how their changes will make their job better or easier. I would just pop back and say, when you connected individually, what did you connect about? Was it just trying to get to know them? Or were you really trying to ask them the questions of, hey, what are some projects you're really proud of working on? What are some accomplishments you've had while you've been here? How do you like to be led? What makes you tick and what makes you ticked? And like, what are your passions here? Why are you here at this company? And maybe that's already been covered. If it hasn't, what I've found in the past is when people meet individually, it's usually just about getting to know you. Yeah. And it's like surface level. If you're their business leader, let's talk about the business stuff and let's really get to know that person individually with that. As a group, I think one of the things, if we've not done it already, I know we've talked about how to make their job better, but have we acknowledged the accomplishments and the years or months of their service, what they've previously done? Have we acknowledged that? Because I think if we haven't done that, as you look to create next, you don't acknowledge what they've done in the past, I don't know that it's going to be met with as much with as many open arms as you could have if you did otherwise, because they probably accomplished things, and you want to acknowledge that. I think beyond that, so like if you're in this stage, you're 9 months in, and you look back and you go, have I done those two things? I know you've met, but have I talked that specifically about it? And if you haven't, I would go back and redo that. I don't think it's too late. I do not think it's too late. I think if you've done that, then you've really got you kind of got a line in the sand moment here where you've got to now step up to the plate and cast a compelling vision for where you're taking this department in the company and why, and connect that back to the why of the company or the mission or the purpose statement of the company itself, and cast a compelling vision about why we're doing what we're going to do, how it will not only help them, but how we are achieving a higher calling, the higher calling that we signed up to achieve, which is so important for us to get to know why they're still here in the first place. But you've got to cast that compelling vision. You've got to define clearly, like, hey, once all this other stuff has been done, I need you all to understand this is where we're going.
Right. Share that vision.
Right. But I need you to understand the company, this department, myself, we're going. I hope with all my heart that every single one of you comes with us, because I know you can be a huge contribution to this department if you do. But if you decide not to, I just need you to know that's okay. But it's not going to stop the business from moving forward, because forward is the only direction that we can go. And I think them hearing that kind of sends that shockwave of, okay, there's kind of a new sheriff in town, if you will, and you can do that 9 months in, that's okay. I think the other thing I would say too is just make sure that you've created this compelling vision and you're telling them where we're going, and you've used logic and data. When logic and data meets irrational emotion becomes really, really easy to see for the person using logic and data. So if you cannot share logic and data and it be seen by the other individual, that's probably your telltale sign right there. If you've done, again, all these other steps we've talked about, that's probably your sign to say, okay, this is not going to be a member of my team for much longer. I need to start working on how to replace them in the future.
Yeah, those are some great points. And I think I'm going to start with what's on everybody's mind. Did the peanut oil stay in the same spot?
It sure did.
It did. It stayed
in the same spot for a good long period of time. And then we probably rearranged, every 6 months after that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you know what?
But it stayed.
I think people were wondering.
And unfortunately, Mike did not stay.
Oh.
We had to come to an agreement that it was not a good fit for him. Sure. That the peanut oil in that spot was a better fit than Mike being in our business.
Well, important lesson. I just knew people would wonder. Now we know. But lots of great points in here. You talk a lot about something I hadn't even was thinking about, like acknowledging the work previously done. It sounds like just from listening to this letter and reading it is they definitely weren't in this department before becoming the leader. So maybe not even part of the company.
Yes.
It's just what it sounds like. So you're coming in and from your perspective, you're full of energy. You can do well. You're seeing the next steps, but to this team that had a leader with them for a good long while for many of their careers, you're coming in, and I can understand why there might be some pushback. I think I would feel that way if one day my leader was just somebody new and wanted to change things, even if they were taking a little bit of time and trying to meet with us. And so that acknowledging the previously done wins and service, like going back through the history, maybe you're not as familiar with, of where was this team 5 years ago when that last leader took over? What have you guys done? It's something I hadn't thought of, but it's really just a good way to honor and set the tone of respect on both sides going forward. I think it's harder for someone to have a lot of pushback if you've just spent a meeting or some period of time acknowledging and praising them for that work. It's a lot harder for them to be like, but now I don't want to do this, because you've acknowledged it. Yeah.
The only reason you have the opportunity that you have is because of the work that was done before you got there. And you might, I don't know, this doesn't really give me a whole lot of clarity. I don't know if you're walking into a firestorm or not. Like if you walked into something that was in a bad situation, but regardless, the only reason that you have the opportunity to lead this team is because of what has been done in the past. And you have to acknowledge that. If you don't, I think I don't know that you'll ever going to win somebody's hearts, let alone their heads, hands, and feet.
And then your next point of when you do meet individually, going beyond just the surface level of, I want you to know me as a person, maybe a little bit about me as a leader, and I want to know you as a person. And what are you currently doing in your job? Asking that question of like, how do you like to be led is such a crucial question to ask in those one-on-ones with the team. And, whether it's through a survey sent out or feedback individually, one-on-one, whatever it is, asking that kind of question can be so important and will give you such insight into how they're perceiving what you're currently saying. Because what they're going to say is, since you've been in the role for a period of time, is probably going to reflect maybe what's causing them tension when you're trying to give them feedback. And so I think that question can just be such a simple thing to send out to your team and ask people. And then you had also talked about defining clearly, sharing your vision, but like saying, once you've done this, this is where we are going forward. I want you to join. I want you to be a part of this because now I know you as a team. I know how you're functioning. I know we can be successful, but we are going this way because it's necessary for this team, but for the business as a whole.
Yes. And in doing so, and as you're giving that presentation, as you're casting that compelling vision, the only way it can be compelling is if it does two things, is if it tackles the why of the company and it achieves that why, but that it also tackles the things that they're already thinking and putting up a fight against. You've got one shot to really cast that vision compellingly, knowing what they're already thinking, why they don't think it's a good idea or why they don't want to change X, Y, or Z. Give them logic and data in that compelling vision that attack their responses in a proactive way before they can even get it out of their mouth, because they're going to be thinking it, they're going to be feeling it. So if you can attack that to begin with, and it can kind of diffuse their kind of sense of like, I don't want to change. This is going to happen. We've already done it this way. Let them do that. That's the compelling piece of the vision. I think those two aspects.
Yeah, that logic and data, so important. And that was my last point that you had brought up, is that logic and data and the way it meets a rational emotion and kind of can diffuse it or reveal it in a way where maybe that emotion is too far gone for that team member, and you might come to a point where they realize it's just not what they want to be anymore. Doesn't mean they're a bad member, doesn't mean the work they have done is any different, like what they've contributed. But if that's where the company's going, I think it's also acknowledging not everyone will continue on the journey when you want to go, but the people who will go are going to be bought in. And when situations like that happen, you always see different people rise up to different levels than maybe you had anticipated. So it's just going to help you learn the team that does continue with you even better and kind of give them new opportunities that there wouldn't be.
Absolutely. And if there are people that end up not staying or that you have to deal with, it sends a message to everybody else too, that you're serious about where we're going. And if they want to be a member of that team, they're going to have to fall in line, but not fall in line so much the standpoint of like, do what you say, but just get on board with the vision that you have and make sure that they're accompanying that vision. I will say, I've done this exact thing in I know one instance where I took over a business that had been led by somebody else. And these are steps from my personal experience. And it's gotten us to where we are today. And through all of that, I will say most of the folks, I would say out of the team that I kind of did this with to begin with, we had 15 people. Out of those 15, I would say 3 or 4 went pretty immediately when I cast the vision after doing all this. 4 or 5, maybe even 6 or 7 stayed for several years. And like they were my next generation leader until they got to a point where they kind of tapped out. But there's one in particular that I had to have a really difficult conversation with and say, look, all these things that you've done in the past are amazing. And it would be a shame for you to waste all of that because you can't wrap your mind around why we're doing certain things a certain way. And I will say to this young lady's credit, I still remember where I was when I had that conversation. She's been a business owner now for 5 years and is crushing it. And I mean, a lot of it stemmed not because I had the conversation with her, but because she recognized what I was saying and said, I'm changing. And she's crushing it. So, this is from experience. So I think, I think ultimately, if you've been put in charge as the leader, act like the leader. Don't just be a people pleaser. Act like a leader, and let's lead this group. And if they don't want to join in, be the leader that says you can't be here anymore. But if they do, let's go do it together.
Yeah, absolutely. You said in your letter, you don't want this to hold you back from succeeding. Not only are you going to hold yourself back if you don't take the steps, you're holding your team back. You're holding
100%.
Those people that do see a way forward, maybe just don't understand the vision yet or how they're going to get there. It's your job to lead them to that vision that you have, to the vision of your company for where you're going to next. I think that's awesome. Anything else you want to add to Craving Changes and share with them today?
No, I think that's great. I was just looking at a book back here on our wall, The 5 Temptations of a CEO, or the four obsessions of a CEO. This is by Patrick Lencioni. I think that might be the one I'm thinking of. Another great book that kind of talks about this, rallying everybody to the cause and what you've got to do to get everybody on the right path together, unified as one. So check out his books.
Yeah, great one to check out. Always love his books. Well, awesome. Craving Changes, thank you so much for sharing with us where you're at today. We wish you the best in these steps going forward and just how you progress in your leadership journey. We'd love to hear for you to check back in a few months and share with how things are going and kind of just update us from there. So definitely write back in. And if anyone else is going through something similar or have something new they want to share, we would love to hear that. You can always write us in at advice@launchpointleader.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.